Welcome back, everybody. Ready for another deep dive?
Mhm.
This time we're looking at ArcBlock and their February 2025 activities. I gotta say, these guys are moving fast. It seems like there are new updates every week. You can always go to www.arcblock.io to get all the details, but we're going to try to break down some of the most important stuff for you today.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing to watch how ArcBlock is balancing both the developer side of things with the end user side of things.
Go.
Trying to make their tech easy for developers to build with, but also making sure that the end user has a good experience. That's a hard balance to strike.
Yeah, for sure. So let's talk about some of the specifics. We saw some big updates to their Pages kit for building websites, and then some new payment options getting added. And of course, the AI stuff with Agent is constantly evolving.
Mm.
I got to say, personally, I always get excited and a little bit nervous when I see new AI stuff. It's just so powerful.
Yeah, AI is definitely something to be both excited and a little bit cautious about. But ArcBlock is doing a really good job of not just throwing powerful tools out there without thinking about the implications. For example, those multi-language features they added to the Pages kit. It's not just about translating words, it's about making decentralized applications accessible to a global audience. Imagine if your dApp could easily be used by people all over the world who speak different languages.
That's a really good point. It's easy to get caught up in the tech itself and forget about the people who are going to be using it. So we talked about global reach with websites, but what about actually making transactions happen? That's where the payment updates come in, right?
Exactly. They've integrated BaseChain into their payment kit. Now BaseChain is known for its speed and low transaction fees. So this is great for developers who are building apps that rely on frequent microtransactions. Things like in-game purchases, micro-content subscriptions, or even rewarding users for engagement with tiny bits of crypto.
Okay, so this is where I start to get a little bit lost. So we've got dApps with global reach and new ways to make money. And then on top of that, we add AI to the mix. Tell me more about these AGenie updates, because this is where it starts to feel like science fiction.
Think about it. Imagine being able to build AI that can help users navigate your app, personalize their experience, or even automate tasks for them. And you can do all of this without writing any code. That's the power of Agenie and these no-code tools that they're developing. In fact, they just held a workshop showing developers how to build AI agents that can access information from the outside world.
Wait a minute. Access information from the outside world? That sounds incredibly powerful, but also maybe a little bit dangerous. How are they making sure that all this is happening securely and that people's privacy is being protected?
That's where the Model Context Protocol comes in, or MCP for short. It's not just about connecting AI to the outside world. It's about doing it in a way that's secure and responsible. They're talking about things like data provenance, which means knowing exactly where the data is coming from and how it's been handled. And they're using cryptography to protect sensitive information at every step of the way.
Okay, MCP, I'm definitely going to need to hear more about that. But before we do, I want to go back to something you said earlier about ArcBlock balancing the needs of developers and users. It's not just about giving developers cool tools, it's also about building a community, right?
Absolutely. And we saw that this month with their Decentralized Me podcast. They had Steve LeMay from Data Modus on to talk about digital identity, which is a really important concept for a user-centric Web3. They're also running these bug bounty programs to encourage people to contribute to the project and make sure that their tech is really solid.
It's really cool to see how they're building a movement and not just a company. All right, I'm ready to get into the details of these product updates. Let's start with Pages Kit. We talked about multi-language support, but what does that actually look like for someone who's building a website?
Well, imagine you're working on your dApp's website. With the new Pages Kit, you can actually edit the content in multiple languages right there in the interface. No more messing around with separate versions or trying to use external translation tools. It's all built in and streamlined.
That sounds like it would save a ton of time.
Hmm.
But what if I'm not a designer? Does that mean I'm going to end up with a bunch of translations that look really clunky and don't match the rest of my site?
Nope. They've thought of that too. They have this feature called attribute synchronization. So let's say you change the font or the colors on the English version of your site. Those changes will automatically be applied to all the other language versions that you've created. So everything stays consistent, no matter how many languages you're supporting.
Wow, that's really impressive. They've really thought this through from a developer's perspective. But at the end of the day, it's the user experience that really matters. So how does this actually make things better for the people who are visiting these websites?
Think about it. Someone comes to your dApp's website and it's instantly available in their native language. They don't have to struggle to understand what's going on or try to use a translation plugin. It just works.
Yeah.
And that creates a much more welcoming and inclusive experience.
It's like when you travel to a new country and you suddenly realize that you can read all the signs and menus. It's like this huge weight has been lifted off your shoulders.
Exactly. And that's what ArcBlock is doing here. They're breaking down barriers and making Web3 more accessible to everyone.
Okay, so we've talked about the updates to Pages Kit. Now let's move on to the payment kit and this integration with BaseChain.
This is where things get really interesting, especially for developers who are thinking about new and creative ways to make money from their apps. Like we said, BaseChain is super fast and has low transaction fees, so this opens up a lot of possibilities.
Yeah, I'm ready to hear more about those possibilities. Give me the details.
Okay, so let's say you're building a dApp where users can make a lot of small purchases. Maybe it's a game where they can buy virtual items or a content platform where they pay a tiny amount to read an article. In the past, the fees associated with these microtransactions might have made it really hard to make any money.
Yeah, even a tiny fee can add up when you're dealing with a lot of small payments.
Right. But with BaseChain integrated into the payment kit, those fees are basically a non-issue. So now you can build all sorts of dApps that rely on these microtransactions without having to worry about the fees eating into your profits.
So it's not just about making payments easier. It's about opening up a whole new world of possibilities for dApps.
You got it. And this is just one example of what's possible with the new payment kit.
Okay, I think I'm ready to move on to the big one. Now, AGNI. This is the stuff that gets me both really excited and a little bit intimidated. AI is just so powerful.
Yeah, it is. And the cool thing is that ArcBlock is making that power available to everyone. Even if you don't know how to code, they've got these no-code tools that let you build really sophisticated AI agents using a visual interface.
No code.
Yeah.
So you're telling me I could build my own AI even though I can barely write a line of code myself?
That's the idea. It's about democratizing access to AI. Imagine being able to just drag and drop these pre-built AI components, connect them together, and boom, you've got an AI agent that can do all sorts of things.
Okay, now that is amazing.
Yeah.
But let's not get ahead of ourselves. We need to talk about security and privacy. Because as cool as it is to have all these AI agents running around, I can't help but think about the potential downsides.
That's a valid concern, and ArcBlock is definitely thinking about these things too. They're not just throwing these powerful AI tools out there without considering the risk. That's why they've integrated the Model Context Protocol, or MCP, into AGNI.
Okay, so tell me more about MCP. How does it actually work to keep things safe?
So imagine you've got your AI agent, and it needs to access information from the outside world. Maybe it's looking at real-time stock prices for a trading bot, or analyzing social media posts for a marketing tool. MCP acts like a secure bridge between your AI agent and those external sources.
This is like a gatekeeper that makes sure the AI agent is only getting information from trusted sources.
Yeah, kind of. And it also uses cryptography to protect the data itself. So even if someone were to intercept the data in transit, they wouldn't be able to read it. It's like a secret code that only the AI agent can decipher.
Okay, so MCP is all about security. But what about privacy? How does it protect my users' data from being misused?
MCP uses a few different mechanisms to protect privacy. One of the most important is data provenance, which means that every piece of data has a record of where it came from and how it's been handled. This makes it much harder for someone to tamper with the data or use it for malicious purposes.
So even if my dApp becomes super popular and attracts some unwanted attention, my users can trust that their data is still safe.
That's the goal. And because MCP is built on decentralized principles, there's no single point of failure that could compromise the entire system. It's about distributing trust and security across the network.
Okay, so we've covered security and privacy. But there's another important aspect of MCP that we haven't talked about yet: interoperability.
Yeah, interoperability is super important in the world of decentralized technology. It's all about making sure that different systems and platforms can talk to each other and work together seamlessly, even if they're built on different technologies.
So how does MCP help with interoperability?
MCP provides a common language that AI agents can use to communicate with each other no matter what platform they're running on. It's like a universal translator for AI.
Wow, that's really cool. So it's like breaking down the walls between all these different AI ecosystems and allowing them to collaborate with each other.
Exactly. And that's a key part of building the decentralized AI future that ArcBlock is envisioning.
All right. I think we've covered a lot of ground when it comes to ArcBlock's work on security and interoperability. It's clear that they're taking these issues very seriously.
Absolutely. They're not just talking the talk, they're walking the walk.
Okay, so now I want to switch gears for a minute and talk about something a bit more human community engagement. Because even the most amazing technology is useless if no one is actually using it.
So true. And ArcBlock gets that. They've been doing a lot to engage with their community this month. They had that podcast episode with Steve Lemay that we talked about, and they're running those bug bounty programs that we mentioned earlier. They even did a fun community poll on X just to see what people are thinking about.
It sounds like they're really trying to build a sense of community and shared ownership around their platform.
Yeah, they are. And it's working. They've got a really active and passionate community.
Okay, so we've talked about the podcast and the bug bounty programs, but let's dive a little bit deeper into the podcast episode with Steve Lemay. Digital identity is a really important topic for Web3. So what were some of the key takeaways from that conversation?
Steve talked about how digital identity is all about giving users control over their own data and their own online presence, instead of relying on these big centralized platforms that might not have our best interests at heart.
Right. It's about putting the power back in the hands of the users.
Exactly. And ArcBlock is building the tools that will make that possible.
That's really cool. And I love how they're not just building tools, they're actually having these conversations about the bigger picture of Web3 and what it means for society.
Absolutely. They're thought leaders in this space.
Okay, so we've talked about the podcast. Now let's move on to the bug bounty program. Why are they doing this, and what's the strategy behind it?
Bug bounty programs are a really smart way for companies to improve the security of their products. They're basically offering rewards to anyone who can find and report security vulnerabilities.
So it's like crowdsourcing security testing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it works really well because you've got all these talented people out there who are looking for these vulnerabilities. And by offering a reward, you're giving them an incentive to report them to you instead of exploiting them.
So it's a win-win for everyone. The company gets a more secure product, and the community gets rewarded for helping out.
Exactly. And it also creates a sense of transparency and accountability, which is really important in the Web3 space.
Okay, so we've covered the serious stuff. Now let's talk about the fun stuff. The community poll. What was that all about?
It was just a lighthearted way to engage with the community and get people talking. They asked people to vote on their favorite features of the ArcBlock platform.
That's cool. I love how they're not taking themselves too seriously.
Yeah, it's all about having fun and building a strong community.
All right, so we've covered a lot of ground in this first part of our ArcBlock deep dive. We've talked about the multi-language features of Pages Kit, the integration of BaseChain into the payment kit, the amazing potential of AgE, and the importance of community engagement.
It's been a really exciting month for ArcBlock, that's for sure.
Absolutely. They're making huge strides in the world of decentralized technology.
And they're just getting started, and it's really exciting to think about how all these pieces fit together to empower developers like you. We've talked about the tools now. Let's get practical. Imagine you're building that dApp we discussed earlier. One with global reach, thanks to Pages Kit, leveraging those microtransactions through BaseChain, and maybe even personalized by an AI agent built with AgE.
Okay, I'm picturing it. So let's say it's a platform for sharing creative writing. Users can post stories, get feedback, and even earn micropayments if their content is really popular. We already talked about how ArcBlock can handle the global audience and those micropayments. But how does AgE actually improve the experience for the users?
Well, that's where things get really interesting. Your AgE agent could analyze each user's writing style and their preferences, and then recommend stories they might enjoy reading based on their tastes. You could even use it to connect them with other writers who have similar styles. It's like personalized recommendations, but for storytelling.
Okay, that's pretty cool. But now I'm thinking about all the data involved. Writing styles, personal preferences, maybe even feedback on those stories. That's pretty sensitive stuff. How can we be sure that all that data is protected, especially when we're bringing AI and external data sources into the picture?
Well, that's where MCP really shines. Remember all those security features we talked about? Data provenance ensures that any data the AI agent uses has a clear and verifiable history. And then the encryption protects the data itself from prying eyes.
So even if my dApp gets super popular and attracts some unwanted attention, users can still feel confident that their data is safe and sound.
Exactly. And because MCP is built on those decentralized principles, there's no single point of failure that could compromise the whole system.
This idea of decentralized trust is so important for Web3. And it's not just about security, it's about giving users control over their own data. And that reminds me of what we were talking about with Steve Lemay from Data Modus on that Decentralized Me podcast.
Absolutely. Digital identity is a huge piece of this puzzle. It's about giving users control over their online presence and their data instead of having to rely on those big centralized platforms that might not have their best interests in mind.
It's amazing to see how ArcBlock is engaging with these thought leaders like Steve Lemay to explore these really important ideas and to educate their community. They're not just building tools, they're fostering a conversation about the future of the decentralized internet.
And they're not just talking about it. They're putting their money where their mouth is with things like those bug bounty programs. They're incentivizing their community to help make the technology more robust and secure.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about how ArcBlock is committed to building a secure and user-centric ecosystem. But let's go back to the developer experience for a minute. We talked about those blocklets as modular building blocks for dApps. Can you give me a specific example of how a developer might actually use one?
Sure, let's stick with your hypothetical writing platform. One of the most basic things you would need is user authentication, right? You want users to be able to create accounts, log in securely, and manage their profiles. So instead of coding all that from scratch, you could just grab the pre-built blocklet for user authentication and plug it right into your dApp.
So it's kind of like using pre-made Lego pieces instead of having to build everything brick by brick.
Yeah, that's a great analogy. And it's not just about saving time and effort. It's also about ensuring quality and security. These blocklets are built and maintained by ArcBlock, so you know they're going to be reliable and secure.
That peace of mind is super valuable for developers. But what if I need to customize that user authentication process to meet the specific needs of my dApp? Are these blocklets flexible, or am I stuck with a one-size-fits-all solution?
Well, they're designed to be both solid and flexible. Developers can modify the code, adjust the settings, and even combine different blocklets to create some really unique functionality.
So it's a really good balance between providing these pre-built solutions and allowing for customization.
Exactly. It's about empowering developers to build what they need without having to reinvent the wheel.
Okay, so we've talked about the flexibility of blocklets. But how does this all tie back into Genie and those AI-powered dApps? Can we use blocklets to build AI functionality as well?
Absolutely. There are blocklets specifically designed for integrating Agenie agents into dApps. So you can use them for things like natural language processing, sentiment analysis, even image recognition.
So going back to that writing platform example, I could use a blocklet to create an AI agent that could analyze users' stories and give feedback on their writing style.
Exactly. You could have the agent suggest improvements or even connect them with other writers who might appreciate their style. The possibilities are endless.
This is incredible.
Yeah.
It's like we're building the foundation for a whole new generation of intelligent, decentralized applications.
And it's all thanks to ArcBlock's vision of creating this comprehensive platform that's accessible to everyone.
This has been a truly eye-opening look into the world of ArcBlock. We've talked about so much, the multi-language features, the BaseChain integration, the incredible potential of Genie, and the importance of community.
And we've seen how all of these different pieces fit together to create this powerful ecosystem for building the future of dApps.
Well said. Now let's move on to the final part of our deep dive, where we're going to explore some of the broader implications of all this. Okay, so we're back for the final part of our deep dive into ArcBlock.
Yeah.
And you know what's really striking me? It's not just the individual technologies that they're building. It's how they all fit together to create this bigger picture. It's like they're creating this whole ecosystem for decentralized innovation.
Yeah, it's like a symphony,
Yeah.
Where each instrument plays its part, but it's the combined sound that creates the magic. And that's what we're seeing here with ArcBlock. They're not just building random tools. They're orchestrating this movement towards a more decentralized future.
I love that analogy. But let's get a little more concrete here for our listeners. We've talked about all these amazing tools, Pages, Kit, Payment Kit, Genie, Blocklets, MCP. But how does this actually translate into real-world applications? What can developers really build with all of this?
Well, the possibilities are pretty much endless. I mean, we've already talked about a few examples like that writing platform you were describing. But imagine applying this technology to other industries. Like, what about a decentralized marketplace for artists and creators, where they could showcase their work, sell directly to their fans, and maybe even collaborate with each other using these AI-powered tools?
Yeah, so we're talking about cutting out the middleman, empowering creators, and giving them more control over their work. That's a really powerful idea. And what about something like a decentralized social media platform where users own their data, they control their privacy, and they're not subject to these algorithms or censorship?
Exactly. These are the kinds of transformative applications that ArcBlock is making possible. It's all about shifting that balance of power away from these big centralized institutions and back to the individuals and communities.
It's about building a more equitable and democratic internet. I think that's a vision that a lot of people can get behind. But let's be realistic for a second. Building these kinds of ambitious decentralized applications is not easy. There are going to be challenges. What are some of the hurdles that developers might face as they start building in this new world?
You're absolutely right. Building anything worthwhile is going to come with challenges. One of the biggest ones for decentralized applications is scalability. Can these platforms handle millions or even billions of users without sacrificing performance or security?
That's a great question. We've seen other blockchain projects struggle with scalability, so how is ArcBlock approaching this?
They're using a few different strategies. First, they're building on top of these really robust and scalable platforms like BaseChain, which we talked about earlier. Second, they're really focused on optimizing their own technology for efficiency. And third, they're always researching and exploring new solutions as they emerge.
So it's all about being adaptable and staying ahead of the curve.
Exactly. And another challenge is user adoption. You can build the greatest platform in the world, but if nobody uses it, it's not going to matter. So how do you get people to switch from these centralized platforms that they're used to?
That's a tough one. So what's ArcBlock's strategy there?
Well, it all comes down to user experience. They're focused on making their technology as user-friendly and intuitive as possible. They want to make sure that their tools are easy to use for both developers and everyday users. And they're building this strong community around their platform that can help onboard new users and get the word out.
So it's about creating a movement, a community of people who believe in this vision of a decentralized internet.
Exactly. And that's where ArcBlock really shines. They're not just a tech company. They're a community of passionate people who are working together to build a better future.
This has been such a fascinating conversation about ArcBlock. We've learned so much about their commitment to innovation, their focus on user empowerment, and their belief in the power of decentralization.
It's been amazing to see how much they've accomplished, and I'm really excited to see what they do next.
And for our listeners out there, I highly encourage you to check out ArcBlock for yourselves. Visit their website at www.arcblock.io, follow them on X, and join their community. You won't be disappointed.
The future of the internet is being built right now, and ArcBlock is leading the way.
And that's a wrap on our deep dive into ArcBlock. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible.